Hello there! I'm about to tell you a terrible lie. Ready? Okay, this is the Hillman Minx my father bought in the 1960s and he drove it regularly without any problems whatsoever. Okay, I shouldn't mislead you. Let's start this video again. This is the Hillman Minx my father bought in the 1960s, but he barely drove it because it broke down constantly, emptied his bank account and made him very, very cross. Oh dear. Let's find out what happened then. Welcome to Cast by TV. Right, let's get started. This Hillman Minx was registered new in 1961 and my father bought it 7 years later in March 1968. Here's the invoice. As you can see, the car cost £225. However, this was reduced by £100 as my father traded in this rather nice Austin A35 van. The invoice further shows that the Hillman Minx had 47,421 miles on the clock, which turned out to be far too many. I'll explain why in a moment. First though, let's summarise the vehicle's specification. The Hillman Minx had a 1.5 litre, 4-cylinder, 8-valve petrol engine that, as far as I can tell, generated about 54 brake horsepower. It was bolted to manual transmission that operated via this lever between the front seats rather than a column close to the steering wheel. The Minx also had its key instruments in the centre of the dashboard, this shelf, and this spotlight that constantly rattled. There wasn't much else though. In fact, there wasn't even a heater, so hypothermia was a constant companion. My father therefore had what was, at least on paper, a really good idea. He bought an aftermarket heater and here's the invoice for £15 and 15 shillings. Unfortunately, the installation wasn't entirely successful. Why? Because when the heater was turned on, the windscreen wipers came on too. And they couldn't be turned off separately. So, whereas father had a nice warm cabin, the windscreen wipers, at least on dry days, constantly screamed over the bone dry windscreen. That must have been really annoying. But there was worse to come. Do you remember I mentioned the car had covered more than 47,000 miles when it was purchased? Well, as you know, a modern engine can typically cover that distance without skipping a beat, but this was the 1960s and engines were nowhere near as robust. Soon, therefore, my father noticed a minor issue was starting to develop. Now, when I say minor issue, what I really mean is a catastrophic failure. The bottom of the engine was falling apart. Now, my father was friendly with a mechanic who confidently said he could rebuild the engine. It's easy, he claimed. I can do the job in no time, he argued. Your car will be perfect, he promised. However, it turned out that the mechanic was, how can I put this nicely, rather optimistic. Or, more accurately, he was completely incompetent and the engine never ran properly again. My father therefore spent more time pushing the car than actually driving it. But it wasn't just a dodgy engine rebuild, there were all kinds of little niggles. The distributor, for example, that was consistently problematic. All these problems combined and led to numerous breakdowns and, I suspect, a little bit of bad language. My father therefore had two choices. Number one, spend a fortune fixing everything wrong with the car, or number two, sell it as quickly as possible. This was quite a dilemma that kept him awake night after night. Eh? Excuse me. Nope, I'm wrong. He said it wasn't a dilemma and he dumped that car at the speed of light. The Hillman Minx was therefore traded in just a year after its purchase. It was replaced by this 1967 Ford Anglia that my father took on the longest, most epic and hottest road trip of his young life. I've made a separate video about the Anglia and there's a link in the description of this video that takes you to it. Right, let's have a look at some other interesting documents. This is the Hillman's MOT certificate as issued in June 1967. And here's its tax disc that expired in May 1968. It's amazing what you find in cupboards. And that's it. That's the story of my father's 1961 Hillman Minx. It wasn't all bad though. He said the car was comfortable, practical, and it was decent to drive. It was also a very nice shade of blue, as you can see from these black and white photos. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content. Subscribing makes it easier to find my other videos. You can also ask any questions in the comments section. Oh, and do me a favour and click like on this video. Right, that's all for now. Does anyone know how to install a heater?